public speaking. So take an improv comedy class, take a public speaking class. Good storytellers have to be able to communicate stories verbally in the room, on the Zoom with other human beings. So if you don't have those skills, you have to acquire those skills and you have to hone and practice and rehearse those skills. Number two is rehearsing, is actually like literally writing yourself a script for a pitch, writing yourself a script for an event, being prepared with smartly researched questions. If you're going to watch a panel or watch a keynote and there's an opportunity for a Q&A, doing deep research, understanding who it is that you're going to be meeting, who it is that you're going to be potentially meeting and talking to.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to NOUVA Podcast. Today, we welcome Eddie Gamarra, a talent whose journey bridges academia, entertainment, and the transformative power of story. A former visiting professor and co-founder of Emory University's Psychoanalytic Studies Program, Eddie transitioned from theory to action, launching a career that began actually on Nickelodeon home video and Viacom's legal team. Then helping establishing Alloy Entertainment West Coast office. As a literary manager at the Gotham Group, he represented Oscar, Emmy, CattleCon, and Newbery winners, best-selling authors, and even acclaimed illustrators. His producing credits include the Maze Runner trilogy that I'm a fan of, Disney Plus Stargirl, and Netflix Wendell and Wild from Jordan Peele and Henry Selick. With degrees from Vassar, NYU, and a PhD from Emory, Eddie blends in deep academic insights with creative and commercial vision. Eddie, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. It's my pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much, Eddie. And just to begin and clear the space now, your career as a college professor and also psychoanalytic scholar, which is very interesting. How did that academic background or foundation influence the way you approach the storytelling today?
So I was very fortunate to go to an all-boys Jesuit high school in Manhattan. Mm-hmm. And in sophomore year, I had a film class, and the teacher showed us many different kinds of movies. But when he showed us Alfred Hitchcock's movie Rear Window, he used it to not only teach us about Hitchcock, he also used it to teach us about Sigmund Freud. And the idea that Hitchcock would fetishize blondes, so learning the concept of fetishism, castration anxiety, the Oedipus complex. If you are a repressed 15-year-old Catholic boy, those kinds of ideas made my brain explode. In senior year of high school, I had an introduction to psychology class that was taught by a Jesuit priest who was also a clinical psychologist. And when we got to the section about Freud and Jung, Carl Jung, again, my brain was just sort of on fire. So I've, from a very young age, been very attracted to both psychology and to movies. Mm-hmm. In college, I was a psychology major and a film minor. And when I went to NYU to get my master's in cinema studies at the Tisch School of the Arts, one of the reasons I went there was because they had not one, but two faculty who taught the very esoteric field of psychoanalytic film theory. Mm. I then went to Emory to help build this Psychoanalytic Studies Program, which allowed people from all over the university, the law school, the medical school, arts and sciences, School of Theology, to all work together based on a shared interest in psychology and psychoanalytic thinking. So from an academic perspective, I have always had my feet firmly entrenched in the land of Freud. When I moved to Hollywood 23 years ago, I became involved in the business of storytelling. And every story begins with psychology. It begins with emotion. It begins with conflict. It begins with anxiety and authentic emotional relationships, authentic emotion conveyed in dialogue and in image and in sound. So I firmly believe that my academic background made me better at my job as a literary manager, as a producer, and as a studio executive.
Wow.
Wow. I was just hearing you and I'm like, wow, you have all this knowledge here. And it's not only making a story, it has a structure in a very psychological and analytical way. I mean, it's incredible.
I have a question, Eddie. As a literary manager and producer, what qualities do you look for in a creator before deciding to represent or collaborate with one of them?
When it comes to what kinds of creators, so what kinds of human beings are interesting to me. So one, people who have led rich lives, who've had complicated lives.
Okay.
Two, people who know themselves, people who understand their strengths and their weaknesses. Three, people who know how to sell. Just because you're a screenwriter or a director or an animator or an author or an illustrator doesn't mean you can rely solely on your skills as a writer, director, actor, screenwriter. You have to be a salesperson as well. You have to treat yourself like the CEO of a company of one. You have to treat yourself like a business person. Otherwise, your creativity is merely a passion and merely a hobby, which is beautiful and wonderful and miraculous and worthy of celebration. But if you're trying to be a business person, you have to know how to sell. And so I was always attracted to people who led complicated lives, who had emotional intelligence and self-awareness, but who also had the ability to sell themselves. Now, of course, the fourth thing that I was always looking for is they were good storytellers, that they were good at their craft, that they were artists in the making. So those are sort of the four criteria that I sort of had in the back of my mind whenever I was interviewing a potential client.
And when you talk about that, Eddie, for these creatives, since they are in a world very different from a world of corporate world, which is very two completely different worlds,
yes.
How can they begin to start this process and this mindset changing of, I love my work, but I need to learn, but I know that this is just a sales material for me to put out there. And then if it got green light, then I can go and work on another craft. How can you give us an advice? Give us an advice on these people who are very creative and not salesmen.
So one is practice public speaking. So take an improv comedy class, take a public speaking class. Good storytellers have to be able to communicate stories verbally in the room, on the Zoom, with other human beings. So if you don't have those skills, you have to acquire those skills and you have to hone and practice and rehearse those skills. Number two is rehearsing, is actually like literally writing yourself a script for a pitch, writing yourself a script for an event, being prepared with smartly researched questions. If you're going to watch a panel or watch a keynote and there's an opportunity for a Q&A, doing deep research, understanding who it is that you're going to be meeting, who it is that you're going to be potentially meeting and talking to. If you have an opportunity for a Q&A, being able to ask really smart questions. So deep research is essential. Number three is being a good citizen of your industry. So if you're an author or if you're an illustrator, you're within a particular culture, the culture of publishing. You're within a particular tribe. You're in the tribe of publishing. So what are the customs of that tribe? What are the rituals of that tribe? How do you become a good member of that tribe? One, you start subscribing to the major trade magazines and newsletters in that industry. You have to learn both the vocabulary, the unique language of that tribe, of that industry, as well as learn the key players in that industry. So reading Publishers Weekly in the United States or the Bookseller in the United Kingdom and beginning to learn who the power players are, what are the politics of your industry, and what's the vernacular, what's the vocabulary, what's the lexicon of that industry. Same thing with animation. Animation has its own vocabulary, it has its own culture, it has its own business practices. It's different than live action. If you're working in live action, are you doing film or you're doing TV? They have different production schedules. They have different kinds of catchphrases. They have different kinds of deal terms in their contracts. Begin to learn the professional language of your community. Begin to learn who are the key players, who are the thought leaders, who are the stakeholders in that business culture. Once you begin to master that, you will get farther faster.
That's so true. And for people who always say, I am a very introvert person, it's not an excuse, because you can learn to do it. If you want to, then you will do it.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You have to be able to turn it on and turn it off, right? Like I used to say to my screenwriting clients, you have to remember that you may be a great screenwriter. And when someone reads the words that you created, they may be very impressed. But if you get into a room and you don't make eye contact, or you can't tell the story in the meeting, or you don't know how to read the room and you can't engage with the people in the room, you're not going to move forward in this business. So practice, learn, rehearse, study, take a salesman class, take an improv class, take a public speaking class. Those skills can be acquired and finessed.
And are needed nowadays as well.
100%, but they're needed always. I mean, we're always pitching to each other. In fact, one of my favorite books, if I could do a plug, Daniel Pink, To Sell Is Human. And I got this as a gift from an author, because I was teaching this author how to be a better salesperson. And she read this book and she said, oh my God, this is exactly what you've been talking about. You got to read this. This is why show business is business.
Yeah. Oh, totally. It makes sense. Yeah, it makes sense.
We're
and
literally
also, I
buying and selling.
Yeah, that's true. I like your painting, by the way. It's very Japanese.
Oh, yeah. This is like, my Japanese corner. Although this is my abuelita and this is my father, my tío Gallo.
At Paramount Global Kids and Family, you scout and negotiate acquisition IPs across books, comics, and more, right? What's the process of identifying a story that's ripe for adaptation? And you have this keen eye. Do you see this one? What is the process?
So when you are working at a major media company that has a very unique brand identity, you have to find things that fit within that brand identity. When I was a seller, when I was a literary manager selling projects, I would say to my clients, you have to custom tailor your pitch to these different brand identities. Nickelodeon's brand identity was very different than Disney's, right? Disney is, what's their logo? It's a castle. And the pixie dust goes over the castle. So the brand identity of Disney is fairy tales, magic, wish fulfillment, escapism. Nickelodeon was about that splat, that slime, that bright orange, right? So the Nickelodeon brand identity was a little gross, a little messy. It was very vibrant with that bright orange. It was a warm kind of orange, a high energy orange. And you think about the brand identity, and then you think about the modern media landscape, right? Netflix doesn't really have a brand identity per se. Neither does Amazon, but Apple does. Apple, especially with their kids and family programming, has a very particular worldview. They want their programs to help make the world a better place, to teach kids to be better global citizens. They want to be pro-technology. Technology is not the cause of the Terminator, dystopian. Technology is a savior and making us a better humanity. So as a seller, you had to sell based on the different brands. When you're a buyer working in those companies, you want things that A, fit the brand identity, B, are not already on your slate of projects. So every production company, every studio, every network has a lot of things in development or a lot of things in pre-production. So you want to make sure you're not trying to always bring in stuff that you already have. So what is missing from your slate is a key question. Now, for your listeners and your viewers, you may say, well, how the heck do I know what's on Apple's slate or Nickelodeon slate? Well, believe it or not, that information is somewhat available. If you go to Deadline Hollywood, Hollywood Reporter, Variety Magazine, Kids Screen, you will see press announcements about a studio or a production company or a network or a streamer taking on certain projects. Go on IMDb, Internet Movie Database, go on Studio System, go on these industry databases, and you can see what's been optioned, what's in development, what's in pre-production. So the amount of information that's accessible to the public, either for free or through a paid subscription, is really quite substantial. So the average creator, the average storyteller can actually be very strategic if they do the good research.
Okay. I didn't know that. Well, I didn't see it in that way, but that's true. We have it there and it's like we're blind. But yeah.
Look, we don't have all the information, but we have way more information than we think we have if we do the deep research.
That's it.
Right. So brand identity, what's on the slate or what's missing from the slate, but then also, what does the boss want? If you work for a company where the boss has real decision-making power on what gets bought and what doesn't get bought, you have to play a guessing game of figuring out what your boss is looking for. So you have to build a relationship with your boss and that person's boss and that person's boss, because you have to figure out who is the key decision maker in your organization. When you look at the corporate ladder, when you look at the org chart, who actually makes the decisions and what gets them excited? That's part of the thinking. That's, again, goes back to psychology.
Yeah.
Right? How to interpret the cues. My boss would say, for example, I hate dogs. They say this at a lunch, right? In passing, I hate dogs. I am a cat person. Now, psychologically, I understand. Do I bring this comic book about a dog superhero? Or do I bring this project about a comic book about a cat superhero? Which one is going to consciously and unconsciously get my boss more excited?
You know, the streaming has actually revolutionized and changed the way, changed many things about television, and it affected a little bit the theaters, but not too much, just on pandemic with COVID. I was going to ask you, what do you think? Do you think it's hard nowadays to acquiring IPs, developing IPs with these streaming services? Do you think it has like a very specific contact with one of them?
I would say that for people who've been in the business for more than 20 years, those people have seen massive change in the industry before. People who went from film to the advent of television in the 50s, right? The 40s and 50s. The transition from broadcast television to cable television, right? In the 80s and 90s, pay-per-view, the advent of the internet in the 90s and the proliferation of online content. I mean, YouTube has been around for how long? 20 years, right? Something more than that?
Yeah, 20 years. Yeah, because 20 years.
So people who've been in the business a long time have already seen massive, massive change.
Yeah.
The moment we're in right now is just another moment of massive change. For people who are younger, who haven't ridden the roller coaster, it may feel like the world's falling apart, there's nothing to do, the industry is destroyed, et cetera, et cetera. It's just another moment of change. And within moments of change, there is opportunity. So it may be the case that there are fewer buyers. It may be the case that there are fewer productions. It may be the case that the productions that are being made have tighter budgets. All of that is true.
Okay.
But compared to what? Compared to when? Compared to peak TV, when they were releasing 300 TV shows a month between Netflix and Amazon? Or compared to when I was 20 years old or 5 years old, and there were only 3 networks total in the US. So compared to what, right? So we have to remember to place things in the proper historical context. And we can't be like Chicken Little saying the sky is falling, the sky is falling. There's just a moment of change. And the same thing is true of AI, right?
Yeah.
AI is a profoundly transformative type of technological evolution. But with all things, there are pros and cons. There are good aspects and bad aspects. And I don't want to be binary in my thinking because binary thinking is infantile. I want to be nuanced and complex in my thinking because that's mature thinking. But I think at the end of the day, we have an emotional response to some of the very negative aspects of the generative AI and how it's rolled out into the creative commercial world. I do believe that the companies have stolen copyrighted material, and I'm sure that many of the lawsuits that are in motion right now will resolve themselves in different ways. I have a personal belief about the intellectual property theft, especially using pirated books to train these large language models. But at the same time, we can't let the conversation about AI be kidnapped by the anxiety around generative AI, because AI is far more complicated than just generative AI. AI broadly has many more applications. So we have to be nuanced in our thinking about these things. But again, from my humble perspective, it is just another moment of massive change. And within that moment is opportunity.
So true. And going to that line, Eddie, what are the biggest and creative and legal challenges when a person created from a small town in Latin America has a book or a graphic novel and she or he wants to make a new step and convert it into an animated series? What are the challenges, at least 3 challenges that you might think?
So the first was the source material, the comic book, the book, was the source material made by one person or by more than one person?
Mm-hmm.
If it was made by one person, fine. Then that person can adapt their own work, and that's fine. If that work was created by more than one person, that means there's more than one stakeholder. So for example, if there's an author and an illustrator, both parties have to be in sync, in agreement about how an adaptation works, because they're probably equal stakeholders.
Mm-hmm.
But if one of the parties, the writer or the illustrator, was a work for hire by another entity, a third entity, like a publisher, for example, now there's 3 stakeholders. Now there's 3 parties to the equation.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to begin to think about, okay, who is legally involved in the creation of the original product? And are they involved with, are they partners to, are they going to get money from an adaptation that's going to be done? And who has the approvals? Who has the decision-making leadership? That's an important set of legal and creative questions that have to be resolved from the very, very beginning.
Okay. Yeah. Like having your house all in order, basically.
Yeah,
From a legal perspective, every creator needs to learn a phrase. The phrase is called chain of title.
Mm-hmm.
If the viewers and listeners to this podcast don't know the phrase chain of title in terms of creativity and legal terms, they need to go research chain of title and begin to ask themselves, if I created something with more than one person involved in the creation or more than one company involved in the creation, who owns which rights? Who has control over the property? Who can make decisions about how it gets adapted? Who gets paid when, and how an adaptation occurs. Chain of title will help resolve a lot of those issues. So that's a fundamental legal term that people have to begin to understand.
And on your background, I really want to know what does the word mean in Japanese. You have like 2 pictures, and I don't know.
Oh yeah, here.
Yes.
Yeah. So one of them is peace.
Peace. Okay.
And the other one is wabi sabi.
Wabi sabi.
And
what
if people don't know the term wabi sabi, they should Google or do research on. Don't do a Chat GPT research. Do actual internet research. Read books about wabi sabi. Wabi sabi is a really wonderful set of ideas that come from Zen Buddhism, and just to kind of give it a very sort of cursory top line definition, it's sort of accepting the imperfection of life, the uncertainty, the incompletion of things, right? There's nothing is ever done and nothing is ever perfect. And so in certain cultures, there is, for example, a celebration of symmetry and perfection. But for the Buddhist monks back in the 1400s, they would get a clay teapot and a clay teacup, and it's one of a kind. It was made by hand. And we're not going to say that that's ugly. We're going to say that that's beautiful.
Oh,
wow.
That's beautiful.
Right? So artistry is never done. Storytelling never ends. Right? It's an iterative process, and you can find the beauty in the universe in a single leaf falling.
Right.
I agree with that. Yes, that's true.
Right?
Yeah.
Well, not to get all philosophical, but and there's much more eloquent people than me talking about wabi sabi, but I love the concept.
Actually, it's a beautiful concept. I didn't know it. I think it's the one with 2 words. No, the one on your the right one. Right? Yeah, that one. Yes.
Yeah. This one.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Now I know.
Yeah.
Yeah. I always was fascinated by the Japanese culture. They have a very, very beautiful culture, and also violent, as every other country has their ups and downs. But overall, have you visited there? I
went for the first time 2 years ago in August. It was very, very hot, but very, very beautiful. And it exceeded all of my expectations. I had a great, great trip. I would love to go back.
So you recommend it?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
How about the food?
The food was amazing. I'm not a foodie, but I'm a student of Zen gardens and stone gardens and bonsai. And to be in these ancient temples, sitting, on the pathway of a temple in a rainstorm, and it just being absolutely dead quiet, gorgeous, in a space that was built in order to encourage contemplation. There are very few places in human history, in human cultures, in any time, in any place, where the space has been constructed to encourage and promote quiet contemplation, right? Yeah. We have places of commerce, we have places of worship, we have places of family residence, we have places of labor. But how many places does humanity create specifically for the purpose of contemplation?
Yeah, that's true. That's true because with this noise that we have for creative people or cinematographers, or even for the corporate world, we have a lot of noise around, and that's true. We have to focus and just one guide to just keep going, even though there's a lot of storms that it will happen. So yeah, and Eddie, going back to one of the things that I would like to ask you with the industry, you were part of you are part of an executive champion in SOMOS, so you know a little bit of the Latin American culture, and that's super nice. And you've been working at Paramount Latin and Hispanic ERG. So what's one example you can share with us with these IPs, of Hispanic IPs, where authentic representation directly improves the project in reception of the impact? Because I know that some IPs are very niche and cultural, and it's really difficult for executives to make it global because nobody will know, for example, a rooster in a place very, very a small town here, for example, in Honduras that we are. So how do you make it? How can we manage that with the niche and cultural?
So, I worked at Paramount Global Kids and Family from July 2019 to February of 2024. In that time period, we had three major sort of events happen in American culture, but also global culture. Obviously, there was COVID. Obviously, there were the strikes, the writer's strike, the actor's strike here in Los Angeles. But also in the United States, there was the murder of George Floyd, African-American man in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And the cultural response with movements like Black Lives Matter created an opportunity for the United States to discuss very, very difficult topics like how this country was built on the backs of slaves, right? Like the economic origins of America and the success of this country over the centuries is due in part, in very large part, to the fact that America was built off of the backs of chattel slaves. Not every Latin American country shares that background, right?
Yeah.
But America had the opportunity to have these conversations. And unfortunately, what we've seen in the United States is an absolute retrenchment, a stepping back into a conservative ideology. Now, why am I saying all this? Because when you're a media executive, Stephanie, as you said, you're trying to make content for as broad an audience as possible, or you're trying to make content with a niche audience that's going to yield high returns economically, right? It's all about money. So you want as many people watching, or you want a small group watching, but those people are high value people. I don't know if this is true, but I heard a story many years ago about a TV show called 30 Rock, which was a comedy on NBC inspired by Saturday Night Live. It starred Alec Baldwin and Tina Fey running a sketch comedy show. Now, supposedly, not that many people watch that show. Like the Nielsen demographic ratings, not that many people watch that show, even though it was prime time network show. Why they did so many episodes is because the value of those viewers was very high. College educated, advanced degrees, higher annual income, higher consumer spending practices. So the advertisers advertising that show were willing to support that show moving forward because even though it wasn't watched by a lot of people, it was watched by rich, educated people who are more likely to buy a car or buy an Apple laptop. Right? And so this is the kind of thinking that never crosses the mind of a screenwriter or a director or an animator. But this is part of how the business works.
Okay.
Right? How do things get made? Well, you need money. Where does the money come from? The money comes from advertising. So how does that dialogue between the creator, the distributor, and the financier all work together?
And Eddie, Victor Andres, I don't know if you have one more question.
Yeah, we have one final question. What do you think kids and family content will be like in 10 years?
Oh, man. In 10 years, I believe that things will not be that different. I think families will still be juggling physical activity, real-time, on on-site, in a location type entertainment, with an ever-increasing addictive quality to whatever the next version of a cell phone is. These devices are built to impact our endocrine system and our neurological system and our hormonal system, and create addictive behaviors. I don't think that's ever going to go away. In fact, it'll probably get more and more refined. But I do think that people value physical things and physical activities. So I don't think the world's going to be that different. Where they're going to be digesting most of their stories may change, and the kinds of stories may change. But I don't think things are going to be that different. I mean, like, look at opera. Opera has not disappeared. Opera was once the cinema of the courts. It was the cinema of the masses. It catered to both high and low audiences. It was big, grand spectacle on a big, big stage. That got replaced by movies, right? But then movies got replaced by HBO and Game of Thrones, right? So like, none of this is going to go away. It's always going to change. But like, you cannot watch Lawrence of Arabia on this. You can't watch a David Lean movie on this. You can't. So there's a place for different kinds of stories to continue to exist in different modalities, in different locations, in different technologies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't think it's going away though.
Yeah, it's true. And Eddie, we are almost ending the podcast, and for finalizing, for writers and creators dreaming of seeing their work on screen, what's the single most important thing they can do to stand out?
Make it. They have to make it themselves. So even in my own business as a producer now, I don't work at a studio, and I'm not a literary manager anymore. In my own company, my question is not first, to whom am I pitching this? My first question is not, who's going to buy this? My question is, how do I make this? How can I make this myself? How big do I need the crew to be? What kinds of stories am I going after? What kinds of stories am I creating for myself? They have to be makeable. That's my first question. If I can make it, I can sell it. I don't want to pitch to anybody. So in order for someone listening to this or watching this to stand out, having a great pitch is marvelous. Being a great salesperson is marvelous. But having a finished product that you can then license to somebody, to me, that's the better route. The proof is in the pudding, as they say in the English language, right? The proof is in the pudding. I get to watch the thing that you made, and it's going to have an emotional impact or it doesn't. It either made me laugh, it made me cry, it made me scream, it gave me the chills, it made me swoon. Art is about affect. It's about emotion. Movies and TV are great when they create emotional impact. Books are great when they create emotional impact. If you can make the thing and that thing creates an emotional impact in its reader or its viewer, you've won.
You've won. Yeah, that's true. And Eddie, for our listeners, since you have your own company, do you work? How do you work? They can contact you if they would like for you to represent their work. How is the process with you?
Yeah, so people can find me on LinkedIn, Eddie Gamarra, PhD. There's two sides to my company. There's a consulting side and a producing side. The producing side is pretty full up right now. The consulting side, I pitch like this. I help people in the entertainment business navigate the world of publishing, and I help publishing people navigate the world of entertainment. Doing exactly what I've been doing for over 20 years as an ambassador between these two cultures. So how does that boil down into actual working with clients? I am a scout. I find books for certain producers or certain talented people who want to adapt books. I work with screenwriters and animators and directors who want to do their first book, who don't have agents and managers, but who need creative feedback, who need industry intelligence, marketplace intel, marketplace research. I can provide all of that to them. With the publishing community, it's helping them understand how the entertainment business has changed so that they can be more strategic and how they sell their books for adaptation.
Okay.
Or working with authors who want to write their first script, or illustrators who want to do their first animations.
Excellent. Perfect. So they know already where they can find you. LinkedIn, the best professional network. And yeah, thank you, Eddie. Thank you so much for sharing your remarkable journey with us, also from the lectures and the advice and all what you have represented in your life. I know hopefully you can be here at America one day, at least here in Central America, to visit and to meet also. We are very amiable and very heartwarming people.
Yes.
And yeah, hopefully we can see you. It has been a pleasure, Eddie. Thank you. And thank you for your time, your wisdom,
Absolutely.
and your passion for the art of storytelling.
Great questions, great conversation. Thank you for the opportunity to reach your audiences. I just went to Mexico for the first time, to Guadalajara, to the Pixelatl Festival. I would love to visit more Central American countries. I love working with schools. As a former professor, I do a lot of lectures at schools and universities. So I welcome any opportunity to work with you or your viewers and your listeners.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Eddie. Thank you. Have a great day.
It's been a pleasure, Eddie.
Bye to
My pleasure.
everyone. Bye.
Ciao.